Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Craig. I am your host, Craig DeLuz, and I appreciate you guys tuning in to talk firearms policy, media, movies, you name it, anything relating to the Second Amendment advocacy, we're talking about right here. Please remember to like and share this video feed right now, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, so that your friends can become our friends and join into the conversation. Also, please make it a point to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get our notices when we go live, as well as follow our Facebook page. Once again, so that you can get those same notices, as well as get all of our action alerts and things like that, so that you know when there's some place somewhere around the country where we need you guys to be active. So make sure, get that done. Also, please remember, FPCgear.com. FPCgear.com is back up and running. Once again, some cool styles, some cool T-shirts for you to be able to get. You can know that every single dollar that you spend goes into the fight for our civil rights. It goes to help us fight, whether it's in the courts or whether it's in the in the legislature, whatever state legislature it may be, or in Washington D.C. Know that every penny that you give goes back into the fight. So it's not just about getting something cool to wear, but it's also about fighting the fight. So please make sure you guys go ahead and do that. All right, let's get into today's topic. Now, you guys know I enjoy having coffee. Well, last week, I was invited to coffee to talk about, quote unquote, gun control or gun violence, however you want to put it. And I was invited by a local television station as a part of kind of their upcoming election coverage to bring people together on various different topics that may disagree in order to have a kind of a roundtable discussion. They're doing this a bunch of different places, and this time they chose to do it at a coffee shop of all places. So little did they know that not only were they bringing in someone who was experienced at firearms advocacy and advocacy on behalf of the Second Amendment, but I'm also very accustomed to doing so while I am drinking coffee. So let's check out a quick snippet from our conversation. This was kind of the very first question that was asked.
What comes to mind when you hear the words gun control?
To me, it speaks directly to infringement of rights, and more specifically in California, it begins to become a slippery slope where every legislative session you see a little bit more, and to me it's very subjective, and I think the question we need to be asking is, where do we draw the line and say, okay, guns may not be the issue.
How do you respond to that?
I think we do need more gun control. I think that as a culture in the United States, we've just become used to the idea that guns are just there, people use them, and I think we do need to have gun control in order to go and make it so that guns are not the go-to idea when people are having arguments or anything else. And I do think gun control maybe saves us from ourselves.
Rebecca?
I prefer to call it gun violence prevention efforts, and I am very much in favor of that. I think we can all agree that we have too much gun violence in America and in our state also, and I think that reasonable restrictions that prevent the wrong people from having firearms are very important, and I think there's a lot we could do to save lives in California.
Kind of piggybacking off of what she said, it's not a gun violence issue, it's a violence issue. I mean, the reality is gun control is all about controlling a tool that is used by some people to commit violence and by some people to defend themselves from those who are seeking to commit violence.
Now, you heard her respond.
Yeah.
Is there something that you'd like to direct directly to her?
In California, we have a lot of the laws that the rest of the country that a lot of the country who wants gun control would like to see, and yet it still hasn't ended gun violence. You still have people shooting people on school grounds. You still have people who are utilizing firearms that are illegal in California. And that's because, guess what? Criminals don't follow the law. Well, so you kind of got a feeling for kind of how that conversation was going. There were two individuals who were supporters of gun rights. And then there were two individuals who were, we'll just say, anti-gun. And one of them, if you couldn't tell, actually works with the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. So I was not the only one there who was experienced in advocating. I'm just the only one that was experienced in advocating that was there on the right side. So just to give you a little bit of a background here. So this was the conversation that took place. It was at a little coffee shop there in downtown or midtown Sacramento, and the whole conversation probably was about an hour. And that whole conversation, there's an 8-minute segment of it. The whole piece that this is based on, this whole piece is about 8 minutes, and there's a link in the description to this video, so you can go there and you can watch the entire or at least the 8-minute piece. But then there's an entire conversation that was, I want to say, somewhere between 40 minutes to an hour that you'll get a chance to watch. They're still kind of editing it and putting it all together, but you'll be able to eventually see the entire conversation. We'll post that conversation for you. But let's talk about a few of the folks who were there. So first you had Jeff. Now Jeff is he works, I won't say where he works, but let's just say that he's a state worker, and he is a hunter, outdoorsman, and not someone who necessarily is experienced in advocating on behalf of the Second Amendment. But anyway, interesting cat. But he was there, and he was really but saying a lot of the same things that we say all the time in terms of, the go-to thing always seems to be that we need to create more laws. So that was Jeff. Then there was Annette. Now, Annette is a former school board member. That's where I actually know Annette. She's a former school board member, left-wing liberal here in the Sacramento area, who during the entire discussion went out of her way to talk about, I have no problem with hunting or, sports shooting, but some of these assault weapon rifles, yada, yada, yada. I mean, really at every turn, number one, demonstrated a lack of understanding of the Second Amendment, which, by the way, has absolutely nothing to do with hunting or sports shooting. Anyway, and I made that observation during our conversation. But so you had that, but also really lacked understanding of, just like I said, some of the fundamental understandings of firearms. Anyway, moving right along, and then you had, and I don't remember her exact name. Last name was Gonzalez or Gomez or anyway, she works with the Brady Campaign. So it was probably pretty obvious when she started talking about the whole, we need to, gun violence. I'd prefer to call it gun violence because, see, those are the talking points now. They don't want to say gun control because now all of a sudden it means they recognize that that's infringing on people's rights. So they want to call it gun violence prevention, except the only thing that they really want to do is control people's guns in order to prevent gun violence. And I hope you guys kind of saw how I turn that around. Yeah, it's a violence issue. And let's talk about how we deal with violence. Because, see, violence is not caused by items, right? It's not caused by tools. It's actually caused by individuals, by people. And as we seek to, and unfortunately, one of the things that was left out of the entire interview was, as I talked about here in the state of California, as we've sought to let more criminals out of jail through propositions and through laws that have been passed through the legislature, as we've sought to decriminalize criminals and criminalize gun ownership, we've actually seen an increase in crime. We've seen an increase in violent crime, and we've seen an increase in gun violence. But, once again, none of them were having that. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to point out, and this is something that as I always said, there are people out there who are well-meaning and believe in the Second Amendment, but I call them Second Amendment butts, and I got this from the folks over at Arms Room Radio. And they're like, I believe in the Second Amendment, but. Now, in this next little exchange, do me a favor and tell me if you can recognize who the Second Amendment but is.
Now, there's been a lot of talk, especially following the Parkland shooting, that teachers and principals and staff should carry guns. Let's talk about that one.
I would be opposed to that.
Yeah.
I'm more inclined to think that I would prefer to see a sheriff's substation embedded in each school rather than just, a neighborhood sheriff's substation. Integrate the two and have trained law enforcement personnel on site there to protect the kids. And there's no reason to have untrained, people that their focus is education handling firearms and things like that.
If you have a teacher who has or desires to get a concealed carry permit, to go through all of the training, to go through all of the background checks in order to know exactly know what the law is, know how to utilize a firearm in those particular purposes, in those particular instances, why wouldn't we allow them to do that?
And how do you respond to that?
I am absolutely not supportive of that. I don't think that teachers are law enforcement. And a lot of times police officers don't react appropriately, and they have tons of training. I just don't see someone who is not law enforcement being able to do that.
So you guys probably noticed who the butt was. And once again, that comes out of a level of ignorance, because he's like, well, I don't want untrained teachers. Okay, so you're assuming that these are individuals that have been untrained. One of the things that didn't make it into this particular piece was I noted that right here in the Sacramento area, there was a school district, Folsom Cordova, that actually included, as a part of their training, they actually included CCW holders, teachers who were CCW holders, as a part of their active shooter response team. And as a part of that, what they did was they actually trained side by side with law enforcement in terms of how to address active shooter situations. They also forgot to point out that no one was talking about forcing anybody. It's if you desired, if you wanted to, then why not allow you to, so that you can be more prepared, able to affect? Because you take, for example, the shooting that just took place at the end of last week. There were school resource officers that were there on campus, but it took them a while. At least it took them long enough for them to get there for 20 students, or let me clarify, 10 students to be shot and killed. Total, I believe 20 individuals were injured. But that took a while. What if there was a teacher that was closer, that had the ability to help out, that had the ability to be able to be there and intercede? What we do know is that almost every single time an individual with a firearm in a mass shooting situation encounters an individual with a firearm, it almost immediately brings that situation to a halt. Whether it's because that individual flees, or that individual is taken out by the individual with the firearm, or they surrender. Whatever it is, they usually wind up ending it. The sooner you can have someone with a firearm encounter that individual, that shooter, the sooner the incident stops. This we know beyond a shadow of a doubt. But, needless to say, the Second Amendment, didn't agree with me on that one. Anyway, folks, overall, it's a great interview, and I appreciate the folks over at KCRA who were doing this, and the guy who led the discussion was it was very fair. I always say I don't expect our position to be treated fairly. I just hope that it's accurate. Well, this is a case where not only was it portrayed accurately, but it was also portrayed fairly. And so I wanted to give the folks over at KCRA a thumbs up. I want to encourage you guys to watch this, share it, and we will share it with you as the full discussion is eventually edited and posted there at KCRA. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please remember to like and share these videos. Please remember to recommend them. Also, join the Firearms Policy Coalition. I know you guys probably watch the videos and you think that these are cool and they're informational and they're interesting, but it's not just about the videos. It is about the advocacy. It is about helping us get the word out so that we can get more people engaged in the process. The whole goal of doing these videos is so that we can try and break down whether it's the stuff that goes on in the various legislatures, or break down the issues in a way in which that are easier for you to consume, so that hopefully you'll take action. Well, folks, getting you guys to take action, doing all of this, it only happens because you guys support us. So please join the Firearms Policy Coalition. If you're already a member, please donate. All you got to do is go to joinfpc.org. That's joinfpc.org. And join us as we fight for your civil rights. Because, hey, we got to use them or we are going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.